Personal Trainer Manual, Chapter 8, starting on page 222. Submaximal Talk Test for VT1. This test is best performed using heart rate telemetry, HR strap, and watch for continuous monitoring. To avoid missing VT1, the exercise increments need to be small, increasing steady-state heart rate by approximately 5 beats per minute per stage. Consequently, this test will require some preparation to determine the appropriate increments that elicit a 5 beat per minute increase. 0.5 miles per hour, 1% incline, or 1 to 2 levels on the bike or elliptical trainer are typical. Once the increments are determined, the time needed to reach steady-state heart rate during a stage must be determined. 60 to 120 seconds per stage is usually adequate. The endpoint of the test is not a predetermined heart rate, but is based on monitoring changes in breathing rate, technically metabolic changes that are determined by the client's ability to recite a predetermined combination of phrases. Note: reading, as opposed to reciting from memory, may not be advised if it compromises the balance on a treadmill. The objectives of the test are to measure the heart rate response at VT1 by progressively increasing exercise intensity and achieving steady state at each stage, as well as to identify the heart rate where the ability to talk continuously becomes compromised. This point represents the intensity where the individual can continue to talk while breathing with minimal discomfort and reflects an associated increase in tidal volume that should not compromise breathing rate or the ability to talk. Progressing beyond this point, where breathing rate increases significantly, making continuous talking difficult, is not necessary and will render the test inaccurate. Equipment: treadmill, cycle ergometer, elliptical trainer or arm ergometer, stopwatch, heart rate monitor with chest strap optional, cue cards if needed. Any 90-word statement will do, such as the Pledge of Allegiance recited 3 times consecutively. Pretest procedure. As this test involves small incremental increases in intensity specific to each individual, the testing stages need to be predetermined. The goal is to incrementally increase workload in small quantities to determine VT1. Large incremental increases may result in the individual passing through VT1, thereby invalidating the test. Recommended workload increases are approximately 0.5 miles per hour, 1% grade, or 15 to 20 watts. The objective is to increase heart rate steady state at each stage by approximately 5 beats per minute. Plan to complete this test with 8 to 16 minutes to ensure steady state heart rate is achieved at each stage. The trainer should progress the client so that the localized muscle fatigue from longer durations of exercise is not an influencing factor. Measure pre-exercise heart rate and blood pressure if necessary, both sitting and standing, and then record the values on the testing form. Describe the purpose of this graded exercise test, review the predetermined protocol, and allow the client the opportunity to address any questions or concerns. Each stage of the test lasts 1 to 2 minutes to achieve steady state heart rate at each workload. Toward the latter part of each stage, the last 20 to 30 seconds, measure the heart rate and then ask the client to recite the Pledge of Allegiance 3 times or another predetermined passage or combination of phrases. The client's ability to talk without difficulty will be evaluated. When fats are the primary fuel, below VT1, the demand for O2 is met by increasing tidal volume. Therefore, the ability to talk continuously during expiration should not be compromised. This implies taking a noticeably deeper breath every 5 to 10 words, but not gasping due to the increased breathing rate. However, when carbohydrates become the primary fuel, above VT1, the demand for CO2 removal is met by increasing breathing rate. Therefore, the ability to talk continuously during expiration becomes compromised. This implies a noticeable increase in breathing rate where the ability to string 5 to 10 words together becomes challenging or difficult. Conversations with questions and answers are not suggested, as the test needs to evaluate the challenge of talking continuously, not in brief bursts as in conversation. Allow the client to walk on the treadmill or use the ergometer to warm up and get used to the apparatus. If using a treadmill, he or she should avoid holding the handrails. If the client is too unstable without holding onto the handrails, consider using another testing modality, as this will invalidate the test results. Take the client through a light warm-up, 2 to 3 out of 10 effort, for 3 to 5 minutes, maintaining a heart rate below 120 beats per minute. Test protocol and administration. Once the client has warmed up, adjust the workload intensity so the client's heart rate is approximately 120 beats per minute, or an intensity level of 3 to 4 on a 10-point scale. Begin the test, maintaining the intensity until steady state heart rate is achieved. Record this value. Ask the client to recite something from memory or read aloud continuously for 20 to 30 seconds. Trainers should exercise caution if deciding to ask a client to read something while using a treadmill, given the potential risk of falling. Upon completion of the recital or reading, ask the client to identify whether he or she felt this task was easy, uncomfortable to challenging, or difficult. If VT1 is not achieved, progress through the successive stages, repeating the protocol at each stage until VT1 is reached. Once the heart rate at VT1 is identified, progress to the cool-down phase, matching the warm-up intensity for 3 to 5 minutes. This test should ideally be conducted on 2 separate occasions with the same exercise modality to determine an average VT1 heart rate. Heart rate varies between treadmills, bikes, etc., so it is important to conduct the test with the exercise modality that the client uses most frequently. The VT1 heart rate will also be noticeably higher if the test is conducted after weight training due to fatigue and increased metabolism. Therefore, clients should be tested before performing resistance training exercises. Apply what you know. Applying the results of the talk test for VT1. The heart rate at VT1 can now be used as a target heart rate when determining exercise intensity. Those interested in sports conditioning and/or competition would benefit from training at higher intensities, but those interested in health and general fitness are well served to stay at or slightly below this exercise intensity. VT2 threshold test. VT2 is equivalent to another important metabolic marker called the onset of blood lactate accumulation, or OBLA, the point at which blood lactate accumulates at rates faster than the body can buffer and remove it. Blood lactate is greater than 4 millimoles per liter. This marker represents an exponential increase in the concentration of blood lactate, indicating an exercise intensity that can no longer be sustained for long periods, and represents the highest sustainable level of exercise intensity, a strong marker of exercise performance. Continually measuring blood lactate is an accurate method to determine OBLA and the corresponding VT2. However, the cost of lactate analyzers and handling of biohazardous material make it impractical for most fitness professionals. Consequently, field tests have been created to challenge an individual's ability to sustain high intensities of exercise for a predetermined duration to estimate VT2. This method of testing requires an individual to sustain the highest intensity possible during a single bout of steady-state exercise. This obviously mandates high levels of conditioning and experience in pacing. Consequently, VT2 testing is only recommended for well-conditioned individuals with performance goals. While laboratory testing, collecting blood samples, represents the most accurate method to assess onset of blood lactate accumulation, limitations related to accessibility, equipment, technical expertise, cost, and functional application render this unfeasible in most cases. Consequently, field tests are commonly used to identify the heart rate response associated with VT2. The major disadvantages associated with field tests are that they do not assess any direct metabolic responses beyond heart rate, and that they can be influenced by environmental variables, temperature, humidity, and wind, that may potentially impact the accuracy of the numbers obtained. While several laboratory protocols have been validated through research over the past 30 years, relatively little research has evaluated or validated field testing protocols. Well-trained individuals can probably estimate their own heart rate response at VT2 during their training by identifying the highest sustainable intensity they can maintain for an extended duration. In cycling, coaches often select a 10-mile time trial or 60 minutes of sustained intensity, whereas in running, a 30-minute run is often used. Given that testing for 30 to 60 minutes is impractical in most fitness facilities, trainers can opt to use shorter, single-stage tests of highest sustainable intensity to estimate the heart rate response at VT2. In general, the intensity can be sustained for 15 to 20 minutes and is higher than the intensity that can be sustained for 15 to 20 minutes is higher than what could be sustained for 30 to 60 minutes in conditioned individuals. To predict the heart rate response at VT2 using a 15 to 20 minute test, trainers can estimate that the corrected heart rate response would be equivalent to approximately 95% of the 15 to 20 minute heart rate average. For example, if an individual's average sustainable heart rate for a 20-minute bike test is 168 beats per minute, his or her heart rate at VT2 would be 160 beats per minute, 168 multiplied by 0.95. This test is best performed using heart rate telemetry, heart rate strap and watch for continuous monitoring. Individuals participating in this test need experience with the selected modality to effectively pace themselves at their maximal sustainable intensity for the duration of the bout. In addition, this test should only be performed by clients who are deemed low to moderate risk and who are successfully training in Phase 3 anaerobic endurance of the ACE-IFT model. Pretest procedure. Briefly explain the purpose of the test, review the predetermined protocol, and allow the client the opportunity to address any questions or concerns. Take the client through a light warm-up, 2 to 3 out of 10 effort for 3 to 5 minutes, maintaining a heart rate below 120 beats per minute. Test protocol and administration. Begin the test by increasing the intensity to the predetermined level. Allow the individual to make changes to the exercise intensity as needed during the first few minutes of the bout. Remember, he or she needs to be able to maintain the selected intensity for 20 minutes. During the last 5 minutes of exercise, record the heart rate at each minute interval. Using the average heart rate collected over the last 5 minutes to account for any cardiovascular drift associated with fatigue, thermoregulation, and changing blood volume. Multiply the average heart rate attained during the 15 to 20 minute high-intensity exercise bout by 0.95 to determine the VT2 estimate. Applying the results of the VT2 threshold test. VT2 is commonly related to performance. For example, if two athletes with the same VO2 max are competing, the athlete with the higher VT2 will likely outperform the other athlete. VT2 is improved by endurance training and high-intensity training, up to 105% of the VO2 max. At these intense training levels, the body can respond and adapt to increased workloads, thereby clearing the blood lactate at a more efficient rate. In essence, training shifts the lactate curve to the right.